The International Christian Embassy Jerusalem is your embassy in the heart of Israel, founded in 1980. From our headquarters in Jerusalem through our branches in over 80 nations and yours in Canada, we seek to challenge the Church to take up its scriptural responsibility, to remind Israel of the promises made to her in the Bible, and to be a source of practical assistance to all the people in the land of Israel. On today's program, a visit to the historic house of David Ben Gurion. A Jewish columnist addresses the question of anti-Semitic Jews, and an educational visit to the world's largest Holocaust museum, Yad Vashem.
This house was built in the 30s, in 1930. It was a part of a very special neighborhood here in Tel Aviv. It was the first workers' neighborhood in Tel Aviv. It was built on lands that were bought by the JNF. And all the houses were pretty small. They were all the same. This house was smaller at first. You can see the green tiles. These are the original tiles. So Paula and David Ben Gurion, they had 3 children, Geula, Amos, and Renana. They lived here. This part over here was the living room and the kitchen. And over there was the master bedroom. In 1946, Paula and David Ben Gurion renovated the house and they expanded it to its current size. That's when they added the big kitchen and also separated their bedrooms. Paula slept over there at the end of the corridor. And this room, that used to be the master bedroom, was given to Renana. Renana was still living at home. Geula and Amos were already married and left the house. Ben Gurion's bedroom is upstairs. And after Renana left the house, got married and left the house, Ben Gurion decided to dedicate this room to the IDF, to the Israeli army. The Israeli army was one of Ben Gurion's biggest projects, and one of the projects that were most important to him. He put some souvenirs and gifts that he got from commanders and soldiers in the army throughout the years. He put them there. When you go into that room, you can see that the window is sealed with bricks. That's because in 1956, during the Sinai campaign, Ben Gurion was very sick and the doctor ordered him to stay in bed. Ben Gurion's bed was upstairs, like I said, and the shelter was outside. So they were afraid that if Tel Aviv would be bombed from the air, then he wouldn't have a shelter close enough. So the army came here and turned this room into a shelter. That's why the window is sealed, and Ben Gurion stayed here during the entire campaign. Moshe Dayan was chief of staff, and so he came here and he updated Ben Gurion, and he received orders, and everything happened right here. This house became a museum to Ben Gurion's request in his will. Ben Gurion passed away in 1973 on December 1st, and on 1974 the house was opened as a museum. It stayed pretty much the same, except for some souvenirs and gifts that were brought here. You can see them mostly in the living room, but also if you look at this corridor, all the pictures, all the diplomas, honorary diplomas, because Ben Gurion never finished his bachelor degree. He studied law in Turkey in 1912, but then the First World War emerged at 1914, and he never got to finish his degree. This is Ben Gurion's bedroom. You can see his bed. This is what we call a camp bed. You can see that it's quite simple. This bed was very common in Israel in the 50s. In the 50s, when many waves of immigrants came here to Israel, it took the young state a bit of time to take care of everyone. So at first they got a bed. The Jewish agency gave them beds. And Ben Gurion, who wasn't an immigrant at the time, he came to Israel in 1906. So by 1948, he was here for quite a while. He got himself one of these beds too, because he wanted to show the immigrants that he identifies with them and that they're actually the same. He slept on this bed until his last day. And you can see that the bed is a little small. It's because it was built for him. Ben Gurion wasn't very tall. He was pretty much as tall as me. And he stayed. He slept in this bed all his life. The only book that Ben Gurion kept by his bed was the Bible. Ben-Gurion wasn't religious. He didn't used to pray. He wasn't a religious person. But the Bible was one of the most important books to him. He read the Bible a lot. Many of his speeches had quotations from the Bible. He said that the Bible is actually our justification for being here in Israel. He took lots of inspiration of the Bible, and that's the only book he chose to put by his bed. In the library, you can see the rest of his books. These are all books that he collected and bought throughout the years. This is his private library. We have a little over 20,000 books here in the library, and in Sde Boker in the Negev, 5,000 more. Ben-Gurion read all of these books, not all of them from the beginning to the end. Because there are lots of encyclopedias and dictionaries and many reference books, but he knew his library very, very well. Yitzhak Navon, if you've heard of him, he used to be he was the fifth president of Israel. He worked very closely with Ben-Gurion for many years, and he said that one day when Ben-Gurion was prime minister, he was at the prime minister's office in Jerusalem. And he was having a discussion with someone, and he wanted to he wanted to prove his point. So he called his assistant. His name was Chaim Israeli. And he asked him, Chaim, could you please go upstairs to the library, go into the second room, take out the book from the third, on the third shelf, the third book from the right. It's a green, open page, 70, and tell me what it says. So he knew the library very, very well, even if he didn't read each and every book. He knew what they were about. The books in the library are written in 11 languages, all languages that Ben-Gurion spoke, wrote, and read. It was very important to him to read books in the original language they were written in. First, when the house was just built, there was only one room here, only this room, the middle one. It was very unusual because all the houses in the neighborhood were only one story, had only one story. But Paula and David Ben-Gurion, they got a special permission from Mayor Dizengoff, the mayor, to build an office for Ben-Gurion here. Later on, in 1946, when they renovated the house, the library also grew to this current size. You can see here we got in through Ben-Gurion's bedroom. The entrance used to be here when he lived here. People used to go in to the library and not through his bedroom. We have his study here. This is when Ben-Gurion used to read, write. This is also where he rewrote the Declaration of Independence. Right before he went to what is today the Hall of Independence. Back then used to be Tel Aviv Museum. And declared Israel's independence on May 14th, 1948. The study is now sealed with glass because this is where we keep the most ancient books. Some of these books here are 500 and 600 years old. It remained pretty much the same as it was. You can also see that there are two sitting corners right here. This is where Ben-Gurion had guests. This is where he held some meetings before Israel was founded, declared. He used to have meetings here. The library was the most important part. Right. That's what I'm trying to say.
What kind of dignitaries or officials would be here? Historic figures now who would meet with him here. Is there a record?
Right before the British mandate was over on May 12th, Ben-Gurion met with Moshe Sharet. Moshe Sharet was also one of the leaders, and later on will be the second prime minister. He was kind of a minister of foreign affairs before the independence was declared. And Ben-Gurion sent Moshe Sharet to the United States to meet with Marshall, their Minister of Foreign Affairs, to see what would the United States do in case Israel declares independence. And Sharet meets with him, and he comes back, and Ben-Gurion sends a car to pick him up from the airport, and they meet here. And Sharet says that the Americans they say, yeah, sure, you should have your own country, but now is not the time. If you declare independence right now, a third world war will emerge, and it's not a good timing, and we're not going to help you. We're not going to send you weapons. We're not going to burn the entire Middle East. And Ben-Gurion hears that, and he's really upset because he thinks that this is the best time to declare independence. And he and Sharet, they argue all night because the next day they're going to meet with the council, which was kind of government before the Declaration of Independence, and they need to vote whether or not we're going to declare independence. And Ben Gurion says, if you're going to go to the council and tell them the Americans they don't think it's the right time, and I agree with them, then everyone will...
it won't happen.
Yeah, it won't happen. So Ben Gurion gets up and he locks the door, the entrance to the library, and he tells Sharet, you're not going to leave this room until you change your mind. And they argue all night, and they scream and they shout, and in the morning he says, okay, that's enough. We're going to go to the council now. We're going to tell them what the Americans say. And please just don't tell them what you personally think. Just tell them, give them only the facts and let them vote for themselves. And that's what they did. Sharet agrees, and he only tells them, he only gives the message. And as you know, we did declare independence, but the vote was very tight. It was 6 people voted for and 4 people voted against. Sharet, by the way, voted for. So,
wow.
So it was worth it.
Gurion did a great job in here.
In convincing, yeah. So this is an example.
And Golda Meir was part of that decision.
Yeah, there's no record of that meeting, by the way. I mean, we don't know who voted for and who voted against, except for, of course, Ben Gurion and Moshe Sharet.
Okay. What history?
Yes. And they needed to decide what to do after the British leave Israel, because it wasn't really nobody knew what was going to happen. I mean, the British said that they're going to leave, and now what's going to happen? And Ben Gurion says, look, 6 months earlier, there was a decision to divide Israel into 2 countries, one Arab, one Jewish, and the Arabs, they didn't accept. No. And then things just kind of remained the same. And Ben Gurion said, okay, now that they're leaving, this is our chance, this is our time. If we don't do it now, it's...
You couldn't leave a vacuum. It would leave a vacuum,
exactly. And you don't know when we're going to have another chance. But you need to remember that back then there were twice as many Arabs in Israel, and the Jewish people in Israel, they had no weapons. They had, they
just
had nothing.
Came from the Holocaust.
Yeah. They had nothing. They were fewer, and they were. They had they had their council and they had their institutions, but they weren't ready to have a country, and they knew that if we're going to declare independence, now that we're a state, all of the Arab states surrounding us will start a war. And
in fact they did.
I mean, it was very risky to declare independence. It wasn't the obvious thing to do.
It was brave. It was a brave move, and had he not done it, what would have happened? Is the question.
Yeah, exactly.
Now I beseech you, brethren, by the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that you all speak the same thing, and that there be no divisions among you, but that you be perfectly joined together in the same mind and in the same judgment.
Welcome to our panel discussion. We're talking about a very sensitive issue today. Is there such a thing as anti-Semitic Jews? Well, Barbara Kay wrote an article for the National Post, and she discusses the scourge of anti-Semitic Jews. We're here to discuss it, what perhaps is behind it, and where it's taking us to. Our guests today, Bill Smythe, Marian Walters, and George Woodward. Thanks for joining me. This article was so strong. Barbara Kay minced no words. She comes right out and declares there is such a thing as an anti-Semitic Jew. In fact, she starts out her article by saying something very sad indeed, that when you look at the days of Hitler, his actions were to rid Europe of its Jews, she says. And when he died, his dream died too. But now she's saying there is such a genocidal attack against Israel, and she's saying this new genocidal dreams, they're global, and today's would-be Hitler, she says, are plentiful. When one dies, 100 more are recruited. And she's talking about the Jewish intelligentsia that has joined on to that bandwagon. Of course, we're going to discuss more about what she thinks is behind it, how she describes it, some of the quotes that she's made, that's quite shocking. But I want to start off by discussing this phenomenon. And I'll say from my perspective, I always wondered why it is that Jewish people will turn on the state of Israel the way they do under a pretense of trying to be fair to both sides. They know that Israel is under attack. They know that the PA, the Hamas, and the Fatah charters call for the obliteration of Israel. Why do they do this? And this article attempts to discuss that. I'm going to start with you, George, on your analysis of not just the article, but how your opinion might have been on the subject before reading Barbara Kay's article.
Well, I think, first of all, the likelihood of there being Jewish people that actually have this mindset, as we've described here, it's possible. I would question a little bit, though, if you look at the understanding of who Jewish people are, for them to have that as then their core of how they would conduct themselves and conduct their lives, that's incongruent. That just doesn't go together. But I know that there are those that think that way. And I'm sure that if we looked at our own country, we could think about, there's some people here in Canada, they're Canadians, yet they have some very strange views. They certainly don't represent the entirety of our country. And I don't think these that they're discussing in this do either, but they're there.
At the same time, you're looking at a state that's facing, probably the only state in the world, facing an existential threat.
It makes no sense.
No, it makes no sense at all. She calls
it
pathological altruism.
Well, I agree with George on this. These people are very strange. I mean, there are two people that she quotes in her article. Michael Newman from Trent University,
yes.
A philosopher, I believe. This is what he says: if it means encouraging vicious, racist, anti-Semitism or the destruction of the state of Israel, I still don't care. And what he's saying is he wants to help the Palestinians.
But he even says, or the destruction of the state of Israel, quote, I don't care.
Yeah.
He said his intention is to help the Palestinians no matter what happens.
And then there's another
It's a shocking statement.
There's another loony, Nitzan Tal from Hebrew University. and he says the IDF, the IDF not raping Palestinian women.
It's racism.
It's racist. and
Imagine if they were, what she'd call it, no matter what Israel does.
No, you can't win.
And I mean, these are the sort of loony views that George is talking about. But I mean, I really think they're best ignored. Because only academics, especially in philosophy or sociology, could hold such ridiculous ideas. Only in academia could they be given any credence or attention. I think those sorts of anti-Semitic Jews, I think we can just safely ignore.
I wish.
But they do exist. I mean,
They do exist.
And they're used.
yeah, if you've gone to a counter, what's the word? Anyway, when they're out there doing their protests and you're doing a counter protest, there are Jews involved, certainly in my community. And I would say that they do indeed see themselves as the real good, protecting Judaism in their own way. Judaism where you don't kill people, you reason with people. I mean, it's ridiculous when you think about it for Israel, but at the limit.
But don't we all want peace? That's
we all
the
want
thing.
peace, but they're saying don't fight.
Israel's getting attacked.
But it's like Mahatma Gandhi said in World War II, his advice to the Jews was, just don't flee, don't resist, just allow yourself to be killed by your enemies.
Just be obliterated.
So, I mean, it's super one direction. That's the altruism, I guess.
All pathological altruism, that's what...
Yeah, that's what that is. But I think there are other reasons, too.
What other reasons?
Well, I think some...
Now, you're the psychologist.
Oh, no, but I'm not going that route. No.
Sorry, too late, no one's listening.
I'm not going to say anything that would say that. I think some of them think that they're sort of reflecting the views of some of the Jews in Israel.
Yes.
But I think they're wrong because, in fact, in Israel, there are only 8% who are on the extreme liberal left. They are heard more because they're the academics, the media, and so their word gets out more to the diaspora. But anyway, I think some of them believe that, and some just don't want to. These aren't the ones who would stand out there and counter-protest, yes, probably, but they just don't want to make trouble.
Now, I asked some youngsters that question once. Why is it that you find Jews in Jerusalem, of all places, supporting the other side? And the answer was quite interesting. This was with a swap program where they bring students up from Israel, and they can be a mix, but they all support Israel's right to exist. And I asked these kids, well, you know, what is it? What is it with the other side? And the answer was that we regard ourselves as the epitome of human rights. And we have a high expectation of ourselves. So that if it's seen that we're killing somebody, no matter what that reason is, it's just totally not acceptable. So there's no reasoning as to what would happen if you sat and did nothing. It's an expectation that they have of themselves, and that's it. That's all that's seen.
That's youth and idealism, and that I think
Yes.
we all felt that way at some time. I thought if somebody was going to shoot me, I'd let them shoot me before I'd shoot them. I don't feel
Yes,
that way.
George has
anymore.
something to say. I'm going to let him say it now.
No, I just, I just think that those, if it's young people primarily, I think they're very sincere, or at least they perceive their sincerity in what they're doing. But I would really like to suggest that they're coming from a place of not understanding the much bigger picture, not understanding really what their forefathers have gone through and what's brought them to where they are, and the reasons that they exist as a nation, and the totality of what's required of that nation. And to really grasp that, I think that would really help them see a very different picture. I just don't feel that it's easy to sort of think, come on now, smarten up. But I think they're very sincere. I just think they're sincerely misled in what they're thinking and what they're doing.
Before we close, I want to bring up a point that Barbara Kay has written. I think it's a very important thought to leave our viewers with. She says, she challenges, in fact, ask a hardline BDS Jew what Israel could possibly do to meet BDS standards for a morality pure enough to call off the boycott and still maintain its national security. And she will not be able to give you an answer. She goes on to say, too, finishing up, that they remind me of families from the Middle East and South Asia who feel that their daughter has shamed them by her impurity and believe the only way to redress their family's honor is through her sacrifice. The BDS crowd's disgust with Israel is that it's visceral. This is a powerful note. And any quick words before we close?
Well, I think perhaps one sort of person that we haven't talked about is the person who equivocates, who doesn't do anything. I mean, I'm talking about Jews now, not the rabid Jews, not the young Jews, but just Jews who don't want to get involved.
Yes.
And Abu Yehuda, who is a Jew who lived in Fresno, California for about a quarter of a century and recently moved back to Israel, he gives an anecdote in a recent blog of when IPAC, the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, came to Fresno to talk about the deal with Iran. And the natural place to hold this conversation was in the Reform Synagogue. Where did they hold it? In an evangelical church. Across town. Because those evangelicals were more interested in standing up for Israel than the
And that's another
Reform
subject
Jews.
matter, because even now we're seeing some of that turning as a result of the propaganda. And unfortunately, we're out of time. Bill, Marianne, and George, thank you so much for joining. Thank you.
Blessed be the Lord your God, who delighted in you to set you on the throne of Israel, because the Lord loved Israel forever. Therefore, he made you king to do justice and righteousness.
I'm standing today with Dr. Susanna Kokkonen, Director of Christian Friends of Yad Vashem, right at the site in Jerusalem at Yad Vashem Memorial and Educational Center. Susanna, it's a beautiful day here. Show us what we are seeing here.
Mm-hmm. Well, we are standing in a very special spot, kind of between the past and the future, because if you look behind us, you see the museum, a very special building designed by architect Moshe Safdie. And this is the museum where we have the Holocaust history, the artifacts where we tell the story of what happened in the Holocaust. If we would be able to look at another direction, we would see the School for Holocaust Studies, and that's the future, because that's teachers and the young people who come and they study the Holocaust. And really, here in the Mount of Remembrance, where Yad Vashem is located, it's really past and future that are meeting each other.
And what significance does this have in the educational? Can you tell us more about the educational aspect, about the future?
So one of the things that Yad Vashem does is education. We have an international school for Holocaust studies here at the campus. And what that means in practice, it means that teachers and educators from all over the world come to Yad Vashem to study how to teach the Holocaust, anti-Semitism, and even Israel today. We also have parliament members, journalists, people of influence coming here to study. And they don't only study with our academics, but they also meet with Holocaust survivors. And that meeting is the one that really changes people, because then you realize that it really happened. And it's people who are still alive, some of them, and they tell you their personal story. And one of those survivors is actually the childhood friend of Anne Frank. Often, especially the younger people today, feel that 70 years is a long time and it's ancient history. But then when they come here and they meet the people and they say, well, I was on that list.
Yes.
The story comes alive.
We conclude our program today with some sights and sounds within Israel. In consideration of Canada's 150th birthday, please consider 150 ways to bless Israel through your Christian embassy, the ICEJ Canada. Consider becoming a $150 monthly donor. Plant 150 trees, 150 prayers for Israel. The opportunities are endless. Please contact us. Thank you for joining us today, and be sure to visit our website at www.icejcanada.tv or call us at 1-866-324-9133. Through your contribution to ICEJ Canada, you can participate by giving to Haifa Home for Holocaust Survivors, Women at Risk, Red Carpet Project, Operation Life Shield, Bomb-Proof Shelters, Shoulder to Shoulder, Alias Support, Beth Singer Children's Home, Israel in Crisis, ICEJ Communication Media Fund, Christian Friends of Yad Vashem, Magen David Adom Emergency Services, Canada Israel Young Adult Scholarship, Equip and Teach, Bet Rachel Strauss Inclusive Community, Gift, Estate, and Securities Funds.